This is Nathan Buckley's Top 5. We promise you, we will get back to the umpire issue. The old temper text just hit.
It's humming.
Its 7th gear.
And I've decided to skip it on this one because this is the big issue of the morning. Obviously, we'll get to.
Yep.
Can I just say, just before you do that, can I just say that having watched a little bit of the NBA playoffs over the weekend, in America, they clearly don't have any trouble finding some officials for the basketball.
Because umpire dissent is
everywhere.
Alive and well.
Everywhere. The NBA players, the coaches on the sidelines, everybody is up in arms at different stages of a game. Anyway, Bucks, over to you.
Okay. You'll like this one first, Gaz. Number 1, V8 Melbourne are only playing on 4 cylinders. We heard Max Gawn talking after the game on the weekend.
It's been a little bit off in the first 4 weeks, so it's funny that you say that and you still sit at the top of the ladder, but we're not playing our forward half brand of footy. We're probably winning games and we wanted to sort of dominate a game. But tonight we were able to get that.
He went on to say that in the second half we played our brand, and he's talking about forward half footy. Melbourne kicked 1 point from front half turnovers in the first half on the weekend, and then 3 goals won in the second half. Now that's not exceptional. They only had 21 front half turnovers. They want to be a front half side. They're not playing that brand. They're middle of the ladder for front half turnovers and scoring from front half turnovers.
Yep.
Watch out. Melbourne are not playing the way they want to play. They're doing it from back half stuff and stoppage, but they're going to ramp that up over the next couple of weeks. I think there's better to come.
It's pretty scary for the rest of the competition, given where they sit right now and the perceived gap between them and the net.
Well, they're 1. Who's 2?
Well, Brisbane are 2.
Are they clearly 2 now, or St Kilda? Are they St Kilda on a par with them or not?
Not enough runs
not
on the
enough
board
yet
with the Saints, but their numbers are stacking up really well also, and they're playing some.
They're coming along all right.
Footy. Well, their forward efficiency is through the roof. Number 2, Max King is the heir apparent to Tom Hawkins as the number 1 key forward in the comp.
Garry, he's still learning the craft, isn't he? Like, he's a young player whose mind and body experience are all coming together, but he's still got a way to go.
I think what Bucks just said about Melbourne applied to Max King.
He is going to get better.
He's a V8 operating on, I reckon, about 3 cylinders at the moment. Once he realises, what is the word here? Because he's not lazy, but he's got a capacity to impact more than he is at the moment, which is as scary as it is for the other teams about Melbourne.
There is no forward in the competition that has a better return for the times that he is targeted inside forward 50. Now you as a key forward, you've got to be more than just an inside 50 target. You've got to get up the ground to be an exit kick, and he does that pretty well also. His capacity to take contested marks is huge. But when he gets inside forward 50, when St Kilda go to him, no team gets greater return for score on the board than when they go to Max King. He is the number 1 guy. The next guys in that are Franklin, Higgins himself, Bailey Fritsch is up there, Rochelle is 5th, Hawkins, Taberner, Myercheck, Membry. They're the top 10 of effect. When they're the target, your team scores.
Not necessarily him, but the team scores.
The team scores, and this
Higgins is up there.
Higgins is 3rd, and
This
Membry is
season.
10th. So St Kilda have 3 of the top 10 guys that are effective when they're the target. Their team scores.
That is great. That is a great start.
And Max King is number 1. Number 3. And still on forwards, this is the revenge of the small forward, and we've seen them all come to light this week in particular. So Higgins kicked 5, Moore kicked 4 in the first half yesterday, Waitman kicked 5. Now Rochelle's now kicked 12 goals for the season, so he's only 4 goals off the Coleman at the moment. And there's been so much talk about big units, but we're actually starting to get some heavy goal-scoring opportunities from players that have played a lot of up and back, selfless defensive running, transition running, but they're now hitting the scoreboard.
I'd like to know what those guys are getting their goals from centre bounce clearances, like when it is a 6-on-6.
Well, I think there's a couple.
And the numbers are smaller.
There's that. There's the fact that we're more inclined to go forward, and
Quicker.
and the bigger forwards have become more imposing. So the crumbing forward knows where to go.
Yes.
So it's much more predictable. And there's also, because there is 6-on-6, and Waitman then becomes a genuine one-on-one prospect because he's damn hard to defend.
But that's not just centre bounce, because what you're finding is the defensive focus of sides and dominance relative in the last 5 or 6 years is being turned on its head, because in transition sides are concentrating on equalising.
Yeah.
So say Geelong, for instance, their wingers get back, their ruckman gets back. A lot of sides now are saying, well, our wingers are going to go with your wingers. Our ruckman has got to. Melbourne have done this. Our ruckman's going to go forward with your ruckman, and you're now not only going to be. You're not going to have an extra defender or two, which you've got used to. You're now going to have to defend even numbers.
Thank the Lord, because the defenders have had it their own way for way too long.
That is true, and I think it's a great point that you make. And that may mean that there are some teams out there that are just a little bit slow on picking up the nuances of the game and the way they've changed. And the small forwards they're playing aren't necessarily the type of small forward that now is going to get the job done with the change of the game.
Well, I look back in last generation, I suppose, still playing, but Michael Walters, Toby Green, who we're going to see back this week, Robbie Gray, Luke Bruce, Eddie Betts, they were like 5, premium small forwards. We're now getting others to come through. So Charlie Cameron is cutting his teeth and doing really well. Higgins himself, he's kicked 2 bags. Outside of that, he hasn't had much impact. Obviously, Dylan Moore, Liam Baker's not hitting the scoreboard as much. Josh Rochelli's nailing it, Waitman. Zach Bailey in for Brisbane as well. So these are guys that can impact the scoreboard, but still do and they can do some aerial work as well as the ground.
That's a great point.
Where's Bailey Fritsch set into all this?
Yeah, see, I see him as a
tweener.
He's
a hybrid.
Tweener.
He's a hybrid.
Yeah, and he's dangerous aerially, isn't he? Yeah. Okay, number 4, Carlton list management deserves a pat. Pitane, Hewitt, Chera, Kennedy. All players that have come from other clubs. So Paddy Cripps isn't in there, and you think, what's going to happen? But they basically have recruited really well. And you talk about specifically a guy like Hewitt with momentum swings and opposition players that might heat up. He's just a great player to have in the coach's armoury to use as a cooler when you need him. But when he's not doing that role, he can still find it and be as damaging as any other midfielder.
He just plays what's in front of him.
So
that's what he does.
Go to the comments then, and we talk about this and the coach's ability to get players into a mindset, or the players' responsibility to do it themselves. And this is why players like Hewitt are so underrated. Competitive, turns up every week. We don't have to worry about him.
How good.
And again, we haven't coached, but we talk about sometimes we turn up and we go, where's this group? That's because you got the majority, but a larger than influential group that you do have to worry about. You look at them and go, I don't know what I'm getting.
As a coach, if you could get 7 out of 10 from a player and know that you're going to get that every week, and 7's marginal, like if you're getting 7s to 8s, but if you had a player that was going to give you a 9 out of 10 one week, but then a 2 or a 3 the next, you'd much prefer to coach with the 7s and the 8s, because you know that you're going to be able to build a team around that sort of performance.
Well, Bucks, you just come out of coaching. Is that in the player DNA, or is that in the club, the system, and what was demanded of that player in his development?
It's a bit of both. It definitely has to do with the system, because some systems find the best out of their people and some don't.
And that's you talked about recruiting, though. This goes back to list. And you're right. So your buck stops is Carlton list management. So one of the underestimated thing is when you're identifying who's coming in, you say, you can kick and mark it, but is he that, right?
Yeah.
So, and I said it this last week about Todd Viney's approach to the rebuild of Melbourne. You don't fit that criteria, we don't want you. If you don't turn up every week, if you're not a competitive animal, and we don't have to be looking over your shoulder every 3 minutes to see if you're doing the right thing, then you don't get recruited.
Carlton fans will tell you that it took a long time to find that in Kennedy, though, as a player. Like, he's blossomed now, but he hasn't always been that same player.
Well, 11 of the 22 Carlton players, or 23 Carlton players, were recruited from other sides. So it's a big part. And Geelong have probably taken the lead in this, in regards to stock picking, finding players that they reckon that they need to add to their mix to stay relevant and competitive. It hasn't got them the ultimate, but I think they've shown the rest of the competition a way that you can do that really effectively. And most of it is based around having a fairly even pay structure and not paying one bloke too much, which I think is a big trap. The last one, what do you want him to say? Ken Hinkley was asked in his press conference, do you still think you can make finals this year? This was his response.
Does it matter when you lose your 5 in a row? If you can win enough? I don't know. But my history tells me that you can lose 5 in a row and still make finals. And there were elements that were criticising him around, like, switch on, mate. Like what you're giving your supporters false hope that they're going to make the finals. I don't know what
a coach is supposed to say. 0 and 5, he's having a really hard time. He's struggling to work out how his side can come together. And you got to find hope as a coach. You got to find a reason and a method and a pathway out of the muck that you're in. And and Lee Matthews always used to say, when you're talking in a press conference, you're not talking to the public, you're actually talking to your players. Yep. So your players are going to hear what, or may hear what you're going to say, but you can't say one thing in a press conference and then say something else in front of your players. So you've got to be consistent. So what Ken Hinkley's saying is, we've got to keep fighting. We have lost 5 games in a row before in a season and made finals. So it can be done, and you've got to keep looking for that hope. As difficult as it is.
So are you having a go at the question, or are you having a go at the?
The question's the question really is a clickbait type question, though, isn't it?
Because you can't win on it.
No, that you can't win. But he's saying, okay, the last thing that Ken Hinkley is thinking of when he steps down into that media conference is, can we make the finals? He's thinking about, okay, why did we start so slowly today and finish so strongly? I've got to find the right lever now to get the mood of this group right so that we can actually reproduce what we reproduced in the second half.
And it's nearly always going to be positivity. It's nearly always going to be, even if 95% of things are going wrong, you still need to find a reason or something that you can build on. That's the art of coaching in my mind, in my estimation. You just need to keep finding hope and reason. That is the fuel.
Yep. And that is why you, in fact, did coach. I said we didn't coach. No, I didn't coach. Wisp, of course, did coach. And that's why I'm getting such pearls of wisdom. This is one I just thought about last night, and I don't know the answer. I admire Lyon Cameron and the approach he's taken to the year, right? I admire the fact that he came out and said, no, let's not worry about contracts. I've been here 10 years. Let's do it at the end of the year, right? Now, that honesty, I think, is great. Yeah. But this is what I spoke about last night, is that does that permeate the playing group in terms of, hang on, why doesn't he want to commit to us? Has he got doubts? Has he got doubts about us? Now, these are the questions that players...
You're talking about the mood of the group.
I'm talking about the players. I'm not talking about Lyon. I'm not talking about the board or the management who said, let's put this off the end of the year, because I think that's a mature approach to this position. But then when they have a result like they had on Saturday night, and the players, what's the coach doing? Is he not wanting to commit to us because he thinks we're not that good, or where are we at with all this? That is the
Bucks has been
juxtaposition between the two.
It is that relationship between coach and player, and it's not just senior coach, although that's what we talk about. So we're talking about Lyon Cameron's tenure. Yep. Yeah, and that has been because they haven't committed beyond the end of this season. But there are assistant coaches, there are contacts with the players in amongst that staff that are crucial to the success of the side. The chemistry that brings a team together on field is very closely replicated by the chemistry that brings a program together off the field. And when you're not winning, it's a bloody tough position to be in. But it is a headline, it is a discussion point, and senior coaches are a really easy point to go to in regards to...
Just one quick question. You went through this in the early part of last season.
Yes.
Did you have one player come to you and question you about your commitment to the team based on what it was that you might have said during that period of time?
No, but I think the things that are the most damaging are the things that are unsaid. Because, yes, that can leak into the player's psyche and it can leak into the locker room.
Did you address it, though, as a group then? And say, because if you think it's important as a group, do you address that as a coach and say, okay, well, we've got this honesty session, like we're all got a seat at the table here. What is it you think?
Yeah, they're fraught with danger. You don't have those unless you know exactly what's coming out. But you definitely address it with your leaders. So right now, Lyon Cameron and Ken Hinkley are spending a lot of time with their leadership group, and that might not just be the guys that are labelled as leadership group, but it might be your most influential players, and there might be anywhere from 5 to 12 guys that they're talking to. But that's you got to get the hearts and minds of those players.